We're in Brighton today to talk to Kevin Meredith, better known as lomokev, about his passion for photography and how he turned that into a business.
My name's Kevin and I'm a photographer, but I don't make my money from just doing straight photography shoots. I write about photography, so I've written 3 books and I write articles off the back of that. And then I also teach as well. So I used to teach, before I was a photographer, I used to teach other things, but now I sort of do days teaching at universities here and there, and also teach my own sort of photography courses. Because I've got quite a sort of big online following, I can sort of leverage that to sort of get people to do my photography courses. So I get people like, I get local people, but then usually when I do a photography course, there's always like 2 or 3 people who've come from abroad. So at least sort of just under 50% of the people who come to my courses usually come from Europe. So yeah. Everything just happened just at the right time. So I was working with you. I came to work. I mean, it actually worked out really well. What happened is I came to work at your company where we were working for 2 weeks, but then you were like, oh, actually, can you do this? Can you do that? And ended up being there for 5 months at a freelance rate, which obviously gave me loads of money. So then I started spending, it's just so many things were right. So I had a friend who worked at Jessup, so I started buying more kind of camera gear, like more professional stuff. But at the same time as that, like Flickr had just started. So I think I joined Flickr in November 2004. So Flickr started in March 2004. So I was in there right early. And then basically things happened and it kind of snowballed and I got like a large following on Flickr, and it just kind of went from there. And that's what kind of like how I did a lot of my major jobs came about through Flickr. Like a lot of the jobs I do will happen because of Flickr, not my own website. Do you know what I mean? Even though my website's got all the information about me and whatnot, it always usually happens because of Flickr. I kind of meet people who are photographers, like hobbyists, and they're like, and this would apply to anything, but they just like, they'll go, oh, I don't want to shoot a horror film. That would be too expensive. And you're like, too expensive? This is your kind of first priority of what you should spend your money on, not like be like, oh, you know, I'd rather go out or, you know, spend money on clothes or whatnot. It should all just be going on your sort of hobby or your passion, whether that sort of be illustration or your music or whatever, you know. So I just always done it. I've kind of just coasted along. I need to plan things. I've always said this, but like everything that's happened in my career just kind of happens by accident almost. And I think if I really put some thought into it, some even better things could happen. But I always seem to be just trying to deal with what's going on now rather than the future. So that's one of the worst things about it, is like time management and that kind of thing. Oh, well, I mean, I was first paid as a photographer when I was 19. Okay. So, like everybody, when you do a kind of a foundation or a GMBQ, so I did a GMBQ in art and design. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And then you get this kind of list of items you have to buy, like, you know, certain size paint brushes and paints and whatnot. And on the list was like an SLR camera, and I didn't actually know what an SLR camera was. So on the thing it said, you know, go to this sort of second-hand camera shop in town, and they sorted me out of a camera. It was like 90 quid. And then we had an induction to photography, and I just sort of got it. And then from that, it's just this whole thing of like accidents. I decided to take my camera to this club night, and I sort of shot a few photographs of that. And then the same night there was meant to be another photographer from a magazine called Eternity magazine. Do you remember Eternity magazine? No. I think it was more of a southern thing. Okay. But it was like a sort of rave magazine, and it was sold in like W.H. Smith's, and it had all reviews of like records and club nights and stuff. And they were going to do a review of this club night, which my mate was running, and basically the photographer never showed up. So they said to him, well, we can't run the feature on your club night because we don't have any photographs of it. And he says, and he sort of knew I was there on my camera, and then so basically he contacted me, got my photographs, and from that I got a job with Eternity when I was 19. So I got paid to go raving when I was 19. It was unbelievable. But things have really changed now, because back then sort of photography not that it was more difficult, it was kind of not as accessible. So to go to a club with like a sort of manual SLR and take photographs was quite a tricky thing to do, whereas it's really easy now, and like SLR cameras are really affordable. So I know someone who was like the official photographer for Matter in London when he was 19, and he didn't get paid. They didn't pay him. He didn't even get travel expenses. He just got free entry, and it's just like, yeah, odd. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's I think, well, I know that Lisa here, she uses iStock Photo, so for like, I don't know, like $20, she can buy a high resolution photograph that she can use over and over again in no matter what projects. It's almost like buying a license for a font. So there's a lot of that going on. But whenever I license images, I always do it the old-fashioned way, which is obviously more lucrative. But you have to have some real hardcore negotiating skills. But it is like a better thing. So I mean, you know, like, so instead of selling them for peanuts, you can offer images to people, and you'd say, well, they'll be exclusive. And then hopefully when the sort of license terms up, if they're still using them, you can charge them again, which I'm hoping is going to happen again in March with Dell. See what happens. I've just always done what I've done. So people actually say to me that my photographs have like a sort of, you know, Kevin Meredith style to them, which I don't generally agree with, because obviously I know a lot of other photographers' work and I can see their work in mine. But I mean, obviously lots of people are shooting film, so I shoot a lot of film, and so basically my sort of photographs can have a certain look about them. So sometimes, depending on what photographer's work you're looking at, sometimes mine might stand out more than other people's, just because of, like, I shoot a lot of film and certain cameras I use, but then I use digital SLRs as well. But yeah, so it's difficult. I just do what I do, and then if people like it, they'll use it, you know. As I said, I started on Flickr very early, and I got a big following from there. And I kind of just people think that I put my whole life online, but I don't. Like, when my wife got pregnant, I didn't put that online. I mean, I know people which I think is ridiculous, I've seen it, where someone's taken a photograph of the pregnancy test with the 2 blue stripes, which is ridiculous, because you're essentially not meant to tell people for like 3 months in case anything goes wrong. But I didn't. The first thing I did is I took a photograph of my daughter asleep at home, and then posted that on Flickr like 2 weeks, when she was 2 weeks old, and that was me saying to, like, because obviously people are going to know I'm going to have a child, but I just thought I would rather keep that personal. But some people put everything on there, so I'm just very like, I'll like take photographs and I'll pull them out of like my archive from a year ago and post them, because I didn't post them before, so it's all very kind of higgledy-piggledy. But I don't, and then Twitter and Tumblr and all this kind of stuff, I just kind of keep it very light-hearted, and, you know, it's something I've just kind of like naturally done. I haven't really put much thought into it, do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's kind of just evolved. But again, it's just like, just quick thoughts I'll put on Twitter and whatnot. And I'm really getting into Tumblr. Yeah. I think Tumblr's amazing.
Why is that better than
I think,
a blog, for instance?
Well, it is a blog,
yeah,
but it's just really super easy to follow people,
yeah.
But it's just that kind of like infinite scrolling thing. As you go down and you follow these people, and the whole reblogging thing as well, because on Flickr it makes people's kind of work, and if suddenly, if you get a bit of exposure, it can just run away and go crazy. And I have a friend who he has this blog called replaceface.tumblr.com, and what he does is there was a portrait painter, from an English portrait painter, who painted like 180 portraits of Russian generals from the Napoleonic period. So obviously you've got all these faces from these different angles, and then he'll take pictures of famous people and Photoshop them in, but they look amazing. And so he was doing these on Facebook, and I was like, Steve, what are you doing? You need to get these onto Tumblr, or not, because Facebook, only your friends are seeing them. And then within about 3 months, he had like 20,000 followers. He was getting like media crest from America, because I basically, from my sort of advice, and I did other things where I said, if you do one of me, then I was doing some guest blogging for this big blog, so I put it in there, and then this was unfortunate, but a friend of mine got leukemia and he needed to try and find a transplant. So I said, oh look, if you do one of him, then he'll put it on his blog. He's really big, and then and it just it's amazing if you kind of know what you're doing. You can get a massive amount of eyes on your work in a very short period of time. Well, what's some of the most I mean, I've done all sorts of things. Sort of trips to. It's really weird. I don't do much in Europe, but trips to America seem to happen more often than not. So. I did a lookbook for Dr. Martens, where basically I did the winter and the summer one. So we did I can't remember how it works, but yeah, you do the summer. I can't remember. Anyway, we did one the first one was done in Los Angeles, which was really good fun, and then the second one was done in San Francisco. But then just stuff like I've had things like where I've judged like a photography competition, and then. I've been flown out to the final exhibition, like in America. That was organised by Flickr, and just crazy adventures. But one of the most fun things I've been doing recently is I've got a friend who organises a thing called Food Camp. So the first year it started, it was really low budget. We just camped in the woods, some woods north of San Francisco. Second year, got some sponsorship and hired a mansion that belonged to someone from Guns N' Roses. Used to belong to something. Yeah, it was amazing though. It was like it would have been amazing in the 80s, but nothing had changed. So you had these kind of like 12-inch sort of big TVs like actually recessed into walls and stuff in the gym. And then the year after that, we went all out, and basically there was 3 groups hired RVs and then converged on this small town in Texas, and we basically, again, sponsorship, hired an entire RV park, where the idea is because we did that, no one else could stay there and complain about us. We just hired the whole thing. But that was amazing because it was just small town America, just basically just to be with sort of 20 or 30 other photographers just having fun. It was just incredible.
How did you meet those guys? Because they're on the other side of the world.
Well, yeah, because I was like the only sort of token English person. And so what it is there's a magazine called JPEG, and that was started by a guy called Derek Powerzak. I always get his name wrong. It's like really... Yeah, anyway, but then one of the designers of this magazine was called, I always get her name as well, Lauren Ralph. Oh, that's really bad. Anyway.
We can edit it.
We could put a little subtitle in. And she was a designer there, and then she became the editor of that magazine, and I got to know her really well, and then it kind of like grew from there, and then she had this thing for Food Camp. She's like, no, you've got to come. So that's where it kind of started from. So obviously then now I've spent, weeks with her at Food Camp, and we sort of know each other quite well. There's been, it's kind of like last year I got a bit overexcited because like one of my photography courses got fully booked, like an April photography got fully booked in January. So I was like, wow, I should do another one like 2 weeks later. And then it wasn't quite, I like to keep my photography courses small, like just 6 people max. But then, so then I kind of did more, at the beginning of the year, I did more courses that weren't quite full, and it kind of like was a lot of effort, because obviously weekends are like, I want to spend it with my sort of family and daughter and whatnot. And then if I work too many weekends, that can kind of bugger it up, and it can be a bit frustrating when you're sort of working. You think, I've only got 3 people on this course. So now I'm sort of like, I sort of spread them more out, and I want to spend more time promoting these photography courses. But it's just all time. But you just realise if you put more time into promotion, you'd actually gain more in the long run. But it's just having the kind of planning to do that. I would say, because when I left my job, I actually had work lined up. That's why I left. Like, my mate got this Channel 4 mesh project thing, and he said, can you do the interactive thing? So I had to leave my job to do that. So I already had that work lined up. But yeah, I'm kind of like, especially with photography, I'm in kind of like a good position for it, because I did a degree in graphic design and advertising. So a lot of my friends now are now art directors and the people who commission photographers. So I'm probably in a better position really than someone who did a photography degree, because they only know other photographers, whereas I am mates with lots of sort of art directors and stuff. And you know, I think it's a bit annoying when someone rings you up. It sort of happens sometimes, and you're on the verge of getting something big and it doesn't happen through no fault of like the person's like contacting you, but it just happens that way. Oh, I'll tell you what I would do. If you have an internet pseudonym, say like lomokev, think about that, because that I didn't put any thought into, because I actually chose that name. The first place I used it was on Match.com. So essentially that was the first kind of social network I joined. And I was like, right, I'll just be called lomokev. And then whenever I joined any other website after that, I was always lomokev. And then it got to the point where obviously Lomo is someone else's brand name, but it's the camera I use. It's one of the cameras I use. So it just seemed apt. But then I've had a problem where I was going to do these tutorial videos for Yahoo and Canon, and it was all going well, and Canon was just like, no, I can't use him if his pseudonym's that. And I was like, and it would have been really good money. So think about your name. It's just the freedom, it's just the freedom. If my wife turns up with my daughter on a Friday at 4 and goes, oh, you can come home, you can forget all that now. And you just like, you can just do that, you can just chip off. But then, sometimes, I haven't done it in a while, but you're sort of sitting here at like 3 a.m. thinking, oh, I just got to do this. That's going to be a bit horrible, but it's just the freedom really, and financial security would be a nice thing, but it's just the kind of like, it's just the freedom, I guess, that you can just do what you want. I've been so long I've worked for someone else, I don't know, it just seems like an abstract concept. If you want to find out more about my work, best place to go is obviously my website, lomokev.com. I'm always sort of putting blog posts there, and I've got all the social media links, like all of them, so you can just basically jump off from there, or just Google Kevin Meredith. I'm the top hit.